Queen Liz welcomes you to The Great Escape, Not My Circus, Not My Clowns, a look at Brennan's life before and after his escape from his greedy family. Before, Brennan was the bank with a beard, a financial resource, and the family prioritized luxury items over responsibility. After, he found peace in the new life and became legally untouchable, trading, quote, wire transfers for peace on the Amalfi Coast. The rain in the Bronx was thick and gray, matching the mood at the funeral of Alisha Thorne. Brennan stood at the gravesite, his black wool coat stretched tight across his shoulders. Even in mourning, he was striking, the kind of man people whispered about, wondering how he'd ended up with a woman like Alisha. Beside him stood Elliot, a 12-year-old with a sneer permanently etched onto his face. As the priest spoke of devoted mothers, Elliot was busy trying to see if Brennan's Rolex was loose on his wrist. "Don't even think about it, kid," Brennan muttered, not moving an inch. "It's gonna be mine anyway," Elliot hissed back. "Mom said when she's through with you, I get the watch and the truck. You're just a bank with a beard." Brennan felt a chill that had nothing to do with the rain. Brennan felt a cold, hollow weight lift from his chest, replaced by a sharp, clinical clarity. He leaned back, the leather of the chair creaking in the silent office. "She really thought I was that much of a pushover," Brennan said, his voice devoid of its usual warmth. Marcus tapped the tablet. "To be fair, you played the part well. But Trevor here, he's a walking felony. The police found 4 ounces of blow in the trunk of the Heartbreaker. Alicia's being charged as an accomplice to possession with intent to distribute, on top of the reckless endangerment for the crash." "And Elliot?" Brennan asked. "With his biological grandmother in Jersey," Marcus replied. "Social services did a sweep. Since there's no legal link to you, they didn't even call. It's clean, Brennan. Brutally clean." Brennan looked at the text thread again. "He's too kind to fight it. She wanted to bleed me for a lifestyle she was sharing with a guy named Trevor, who races for 5 grand pots. Greed makes people short-sighted," Marcus said, closing the file with a definitive thud. "If she'd waited 2 months, she would have hit that anniversary. If she hadn't gotten into that car, she might have won. Instead, she's facing 5 to 10, and you're walking away with every cent of your inheritance intact. What's the next move?" Marcus offered a thin, shark-like smile. "There isn't one. We do nothing. We don't file for divorce. She's incapacitated anyway. We don't visit. We let the state take the lead on the criminal side. By the time she wakes up, or soberly speaks to a public defender, you'll be a ghost." Brennan stood up, buttoning his coat. He felt years younger. "I think I'll take that trip to Montana now. Bring a fly rod," Marcus suggested, standing to shake his hand. "And Brennan, don't be so kind next time." "Next time," Brennan said. "I'm getting a prenup before I even learn their last name." Brennan reached the doorway, but Alicia's mother, Linda, lunged forward to block his path. Her face was a mask of blotchy indignation. "You owe us, Brennan," she hissed, her voice cracking. "After everything we've been through with the accident, you're just going to walk out on family?" "Family?" Brennan let out a short, dry laugh. "Linda, you've spent the last 3 years treating my bank account like an open bar. I'm not a husband, I'm a line of credit. How can you be so cold?" Steve interjected, stepping up beside his mother. "The kid's traumatized. He needs stability. He needs that truck. He needs a social worker and a boot camp," Brennan shot back, looking Steve up and down. "And you need a job, Steve. My keys stay in my pocket." Joe stepped forward from the corner, his presence looming behind Brennan like a silent sentry. "Time to go, B. The air in here is getting expensive." Sarah walked over, placing a gentle hand on Brennan's arm before looking at the stunned crowd. "I've got the invoices for the catering you forgot to pay for last Christmas, Linda. Maybe use that summer camp money for the debt collectors." The room erupted into hushed, panicked whispers. Martha's gin and tonic slopped over the rim of her glass as she pointed a trembling finger at Brennan. "We'll sue. We'll take you for every penny." "With what lawyer?" Brennan asked, leaning in. "Marcus already has the dashcam footage of Trevor and Alisha. The only thing you're getting from me is a bill for the locks I changed this morning." He turned his gaze one last time toward the boy. "Put it back, Elliot, And tell your grandma where you hid her jewelry box last Thanksgiving. I'm done being the fall guy. You can't leave him, Martha shrieked. He's a child. He's your circus, Brennan said, stepping toward the door. And he's definitely your clown. Sarah leaned against the railing, watching the steam rise from her mug. That's the fifth one this morning. Still Linda? Linda, Steve, or a collection agency looking for the man of the house, Brennan said, sliding the phone into his pocket without a second glance. They haven't realized yet that the house is empty and the man is gone. Sarah took a slow sip. Joe told me Steve tried to break into your garage yesterday. Apparently he thought you left the keys to the Ducati. Brennan snorted, a genuine, relaxed sound. He found a pile of empty cardboard boxes and a note with the name of a local temp agency. I'm sure he's devastated. The silence that followed wasn't heavy or loaded. It was the kind of quiet Brennan hadn't known for years. He watched a hawk circle over the water, its wings catching the light. For a long time his life had felt like a siege, defending his sanity against a family of professional scavengers. What's the plan for today? Sarah asked, nudging his shoulder with hers. No lawyers, no forensic accountants. Today? I'm thinking about that old sailboat in the harbor, Brennan replied, looking at her. The owner says the hull is sound but the rigging is a mess. It needs work. Sounds like a project. It's a project that doesn't talk back or lie about where it spent the weekend, Brennan said. He felt the phantom weight of Alisha's drama finally dissolving. It's just wood, wind, and water. Simple. His phone buzzed again on the wooden table. This time, it was a text. He glanced at the screen. Brennan, Elliot is crying for you. He says he's sorry about the jewelry box. We need groceries, please. Brennan didn't type a reply. He didn't feel the old, familiar pang of guilt. Instead, he simply blocked the number, deleted the thread, and turned his back on the screen to face the river. The coffee is perfect, Sarah, he said softly. Everything is. Back in the Bronx, Alicia's mother's house was a war zone. Elliot, drop the toaster! Aunt Martha screamed as the boy ran through the kitchen, having successfully hot-wired the neighbor's golf cart earlier that morning. Make me, you old bat! Elliot yelled, sliding across the linoleum. Cousin Steve sat on the sofa, head in his hands. The lawyer said Brennan can't be touched. He blocked all our numbers. We have to pay for the broken window at the school ourselves. How much? The grandmother asked, trembling. $4 grand. And the insurance company found out Alisha was drag racing, so they aren't paying a dime for the funeral. Just then, a loud crash echoed from upstairs. Elliot had successfully redistributed the grandmother's heirloom china from the top shelf to the floor. I miss Brennan, Steve whispered. We all do, Martha sobbed, as Elliot began to practice his beatboxing at maximum volume. Call him again, Linda shrieked, clutching a stack of past due notices. Use your phone, Steve. He hasn't blocked you yet, has he? He blocked everyone, Ma. Even the priest, Steve yelled back over a rhythmic spit-flecked Boots and Cats beat coming from the hallway. I went to his office. The receptionist told me he's indefinitely unavailable, and then threatened to call security. He's gone. Actually gone. But the mortgage, Linda wailed. Alisha said he'd cover the transition period. She said he was a soft touch. She lied, Linda. Martha snapped, dodging a flying sneaker Elliot had launched from the stairs. She was playing him, and now we're the ones paying the price. Look at this kid. He's a menace. I'm a visionary, Elliot shouted, followed by the sound of a heavy curtain rod ripping out of the drywall. Brennan, 50 miles away, took a sip of his coffee and watched the river flow by. Total silence. The dust had finally settled, but for the circus left behind in the Bronx, the desperation was just reaching a fever pitch. The door flew open with such force that it rattled the framed photos of Alisha's modeling shots on the wall. A tall, grim-faced man in a tailored suit stepped into the room, holding a briefcase like a weapon. It wasn't Brennan. It was Marcus, his lawyer, looking like a shark that had just found a leaking life raft. Behind him stood two men in windbreakers with "Private Security" emblazoned on the back. "Mr. Snidely, I assume," Marcus said, his voice slicing through the thick cigarette smoke. "I tell you it's a pleasure, but I've seen your disbarment hearings. They're quite a read." Snidely scrambled to hide his greasy notepad, his hands shaking. "We were just discussing a legitimate claim of financial expectation." "You were discussing a felony extortion plot," Marcus interrupted, snapping his briefcase open. He began sliding documents onto the coffee table, covering the unpaid bills and a half-eaten pizza. "Let's skip the games. This is a formal notification that Brennan has filed a criminal complaint for fraud against Alisha Thorne. We have the forensic accounting of the tuition money she spent on Trevor's racing tires." "He can't do that," Linda shrieked, lunging toward Marcus. "He loved that boy. He's the only father Elliot has." "He loved the boy he thought existed," Marcus countered coldly, stepping aside as the security guards moved forward. "Not the one currently trying to dismantle the neighbor's HVAC unit for copper scrap. And since you mentioned implicit contracts, Brennan has decided to honor one of his own. He's calling in the personal loans he made to you, Steve, and Aunt Martha over the last 3 years, totaling $84,000. Pay up, or I file the liens on this house tomorrow morning." The room went deathly silent, save for the muffled, spit-flecked sound of Elliot beatboxing in the kitchen. "$84,000, Steve whispered, his face going gray. "We don't have 84 cents. He's trying to ruin us." "He's not trying to ruin you, Steve," Marcus said, buttoning his jacket with surgical precision. "He's just stopping the bleeding. The bank with a beard is closed. The vault is empty. And the debt is due." As Marcus walked out, he paused by the door. "Oh, and Linda, tell Elliot to put the silver back. I'm calling the police in 5 minutes, and I'd hate for his visionary career to start in juvie for grand larceny." "24 hours later, the Bronx street was filled with the sound of grinding gears and the shrill cries of Linda Miller. A yellow bulldozer sat idling at the curb, its massive blade catching the morning sun. "You can't do this. I have rights," Linda screamed at the sheriff's deputy standing on her porch. "Ma'am, the house was sold in a private sale 48 hours ago," the deputy said, his hand resting on his belt. "The new owner, a development firm, wants the site cleared. Mr. Brennan gave you 30 days' notice of his intent to sell last month. You just chose to ignore the certified mail." "I thought it was a bluff," Martha wailed, clutching a box of Alicia's old pageant trophies. "He's a soft touch. He always bluffs." Inside, the house was a hollowed-out shell. Steve was frantically trying to unscrew the kitchen faucet, hoping to sell the chrome. "Steve, move!" the deputy shouted through the open door. "The crew is moving in." "I'm a visionary," Elliot screamed, running out the front door with a toaster tucked under his arm. He sprinted past the bulldozer, throwing a middle finger at the driver. As the family stood on the sidewalk, surrounded by bags of mismatched clothes and broken furniture, the bulldozer lurched forward. The sound of the front porch splintering under the weight of the machine was a final, definitive period at the end of Brennan's long sentence. "Where do we go?" Martha asked, her voice small and trembling. "I don't know," Steve muttered, staring at his phone. "But Brennan's gone. He's not answering, and the lawyer's office says he's out of the country. He actually left us out here." In the sterile, white-walled ward of the prison hospital, Alisha sat with her leg in a traction rig. She looked at the small television mounted on the wall, her eyes wide with disbelief. "The local news," she whispered. "He made the local news." The screen showed her mother's house being leveled. The reporter was talking about the Great Escape and how a local businessman had finally evicted his own baggage. "That's my house," Alisha hissed, her voice cracking. "That's my life he's knocking down." A police officer stood by the door, reading a magazine. "Actually, it's his house, lady." Or it was. "Sold it for a pretty penny, too. Donated half of it to a charity for foster kids." Said he wanted to help children who actually have a future. He's a monster, Alisha spat, her manicured nails digging into the hospital sheets. I'll sue him. I'll take his soul. With what? The officer laughed. Your boyfriend Trevor already flipped on you. Said the drugs were yours. Said the racing was your idea. You're looking at 10 years, minimum. And your lawyer? Snidely? I heard he's getting his license pulled today. Alisha felt the cold reality of her situation settle in. No more wire transfers. No more emergencies that Brennan would fix with a check. She was just a woman in a gown, facing a decade of prison, with a family that couldn't even afford a bus ticket to visit her. I'll call him, she whispered. He'll answer for me. He's too kind. He changed his number, honey, the officer said without looking up. And his name. And his state. You're talking to a ghost. "50 miles away, the Hudson River was a sheet of rippling silver. Brennan sat on the deck of his cabin, the only sound being the wind through the pines and the clink of ice in his glass. Sarah walked out, sliding a plate of fresh bread onto the table. You've been staring at that water for an hour. Thinking about the Bronx? No, Brennan said, and he was surprised to find he meant it. I was thinking about the boat. I think I'll name her the Clean Break. A bit on the nose, don't you think? Sarah smiled, sitting across from him. Maybe. But after 3 years of being a bank with a beard, I think I've earned a little lack of subtlety. He picked up his phone, which had been silent for 6 hours. No calls from Linda. No threatening texts from Steve. No fake medical emergencies from Alisha. Marcus called, Brennan said. The house is down. The liens are filed. They're in a motel for the week, and after that, they're on their own. He said Linda tried to tell the police I stole her jewelry box. The one Elliot hid? Sarah asked. Exactly. The police found it under his bed during the move-out. They're charging him with possession of stolen property. Brennan sighed, but there was no weight in it. I spent so much time trying to fix them, Sarah. I didn't realize they were the ones breaking me. You're not broken anymore, she said softly. No, Brennan agreed, looking out at the horizon. I'm just finished. The circus is over, and I'm finally home. In the desperate play, the family attempts to file a $200,000 lawsuit for implicit contract support, hoping Brennan will settle for $50,000 just to make them go away. The motel room was a cramped, neon-lit nightmare. Steve, Linda, and Martha were huddled around a single microwave burrito, the air thick with the smell of cheap carpet cleaner and resentment. Elliot, stop that noise. Martha snapped as the boy sat in the corner, beatboxing a frantic, aggressive rhythm against the plastic headboard. Shut up, you old bat, Elliot yelled back. I'm practicing for my audition. I'm gonna be a star. You're gonna be a convict if you don't keep your hands off the motel's towels, Steve muttered. He was staring at a job application for a local warehouse. We have 3 days left on the prepaid room Brennan gave us. 3 days. He'll send more, Linda said, her voice delusional. He's just teaching us a lesson. He wants us to appreciate him more. He'll call tomorrow and apologize for the bulldozer. Ma, he sold the land, Steve said, slamming his hand on the table. The house is a pile of bricks. There's nothing to apologize for, because there's nothing to go back to. He's gone. He's actually gone. We can find him, Martha urged. We'll hire a private investigator. We'll track him to Montana. With what money? Steve asked. He took the car. He took the accounts. We're in a Motel 6 in the Bronx, and the only thing we have is $84,000 in debt to a man who never wants to see our faces again. In the corner, Elliot hit a particularly loud bass note with his mouth. The sound echoed in the small room, a hollow, frantic beat that symbolized their new reality. The bank was closed, and for the first time in their lives, they had to pay their own way. The motel room was a cramped, neon-lit nightmare. Steve, Linda, and Martha were huddled around a single microwave burrito, the air thick with the smell of cheap carpet cleaner and resentment. "Elliot, stop that noise," Martha snapped as the boys sat in the corner, beatboxing a frantic, aggressive rhythm against the plastic headboard. "Shut up, you old bat," Elliot yelled back. "I'm practicing for my audition. I'm gonna be a star." "You're gonna be a convict if you don't keep your hands off the motel's towels," Steve muttered. He was staring at a job application for a local warehouse. "We have 3 days left on the prepaid room Brennan gave us." 3 days. "He'll send more," Linda said, her voice delusional. "He's just teaching us a lesson. He wants us to appreciate him more. He'll call tomorrow and apologize for the bulldozer." "Ma, he sold the land," Steve said, slamming his hand on the table. "The house is a pile of bricks. There's nothing to apologize for, because there's nothing to go back to. He's gone. He's actually gone." "We can find him," Martha urged. "We'll hire a private investigator. We'll track him to Montana." "With what money?" Steve asked. "He took the car. He took the accounts. We're in a Motel 6 in the Bronx, and the only thing we have is $84,000 in debt to a man who never wants to see our faces again." In the corner, Elliot hit a particularly loud bass note with his mouth. The sound echoed in the small room, a hollow, frantic beat that symbolized their new reality. The bank was closed, and for the first time in their lives, they had to pay their own way. A week later, the white hull of the clean brakes sparkled as it hit the Hudson. Standing on the dock, Brennan felt a lightness in his chest that had been missing for years. Marcus was handling the legal fallout like a professional assassin, sparing Brennan the noise of the final collapse. "I got a letter today," Brennan said, watching the rigging hum. Forwarded through Marcus. It was from Elliot. Sarah arched an eyebrow. "An apology?" "Hardly. It was a gift list for his birthday, a dirt bike, an iPhone, and a settlement for the trauma of losing the house." Brennan laughed, a genuine, relaxed sound. "He actually thought I'd reach for my checkbook." "What did you do with it?" "Gave it to Marcus for the restraining order hearing." Evidence of continued harassment. Brennan offered her a hand as he stepped onto the deck. "They're still waiting for the ringmaster to come back and start the show." "And the ringmaster?" "Retired," Brennan said, pulling the dock lines. "He's going sailing, and he's not bringing any clowns." 50 miles away, the Circus was performing for a much tougher audience. Inside a drab Department of Social Services office, Linda looked at the peeling gray paint with pure disdain. "This is a mistake," she hissed, clutching her numbered ticket. "We're family of a millionaire. We're family of a man who's in the middle of the Atlantic, Ma," Steve muttered, his voice flat. "We're just people in a line now." Elliot sat on a plastic chair, attempting to pick the lock of a supply closet with a paperclip, until a bored security guard tapped his shoulder. "Keep your hands visible, kid. The city's got a program for visionaries like you. It involves a scrub brush and a subway station." Martha sat on the bench, staring into her empty gin bottle. "Do you think Alisha will get out soon?" "She's looking at 10 years, Martha," Steve said. "And we're looking at a 3-hour wait for food stamps. Welcome to the show." Back on the water, the Bronx tension finally evaporated into the salt air. Brennan leaned back against the helm, a cold drink in hand and the sun warming his face. For the first time, he didn't have to fix a single person or pay for a single lie. He looked at the vast open horizon and smiled. The circus had finally, mercifully, left town. In the sun-drenched silence of the bakery, Brennan traced the Amalfi coastline on a map spread across the flour-dusted counter. The tension that had defined his jaw for 3 years was gone, replaced by the calm of a man who had finally stopped paying for a life he didn't want. "Positano," Brennan said, his voice steady. "No cell service, no fake emergencies, and no one screaming about stolen PlayStations." Sarah leaned over, her eyes reflecting the warmth of the overhead lights. "You've spent so long paying for everyone else's mistakes, Brennan. Are you sure you're ready to spend money on yourself?" "I'm ready to spend it on us," he replied, catching her hand. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Legal notice. You are being sued for breach of implicit support. See you in court, heartless jerk." Brennan didn't flinch. He simply handed the device to Sarah. She glanced at the screen, then dropped the phone into a bucket of sourdough starter with a satisfying splash. "The sourdough solution," she whispered. "Marcus already told you their theory is worth less than this flour. They have no standing, Brennan. They're just ghosts rattling chains in a house they don't own anymore." 2 weeks later, the ghosts stood in a courtroom. Mr. Snidely gestured wildly toward Brennan's empty chair. He's fleeing his responsibilities, Your Honor. He's in Europe. The judge slammed her gavel, her expression freezing Snidely mid-sentence. He is in Europe because he has no legal obligation to be here. This claim of an implicit contract is frivolous. You cannot demand support for a child that isn't his, especially when the mother was plotting to defraud him. Case dismissed. File this again, and I'll sanction you for wasting the court's time. As the family shuffled out, bickering over the legal fees they couldn't pay, Steve's phone chimed. It was an automated post from Brennan's account, a photo of a sparkling blue ocean and 2 glasses of wine. The caption read, "The circus is closed. The clowns are on their own." Back in the Bronx, Elliot was currently starting a small, controlled fire in the backyard. The circus was still in town, but 50 miles away, Brennan leaned back into the Mediterranean breeze. He was no longer the ringmaster or the bank. He was finally a spectator, watching the horizon from a world away. Thank you for watching this video. If you liked this video and would like more content like this, please like, comment, and hype this and other Queen Liz videos. Also subscribe to the YouTube channel. It is free for you, and Queen Liz would be ever so grateful.